G'day guys, Emmy Duckman here. Before finding success as a talented musician, the artist Joji ran the notoriously iconic YouTube channel Filthy Frank. However, in 2017, Joji would retire the Filthy Frank character to pursue his music career more seriously. Even though there had been no new Filthy Frank content for over 6 years now, there still exists a very large Filthy Frank fan base. These fans, in the absence of any new material, have meticulously documented all existing Filthy Frank material, either documenting his material on the Filthy Frank wiki, which I've covered in a previous video, or archiving all his known videos, a topic which Just Jargon has produced a brilliant video on. Now, as well as trying to get their hands on all known Filthy Frank videos, fans also regularly like to get their hands on Filthy Frank merch too. Back when Filthy Frank was still active, Joji had sold Filthy Frank merch through 3 different websites, which we'll talk about shortly. Frequently, on the r/FilthyFrank subreddit, fans would post about Filthy Frank merch, either sharing photos of their old merch, selling their merch, or asking to buy merch from other users. But by far, one of the most often asked questions is whether it's still possible to buy Filthy Frank merch to this day. This question is asked so often that on r/FilthyFrank, in the sidebar, a notice addressing this question has been added. The sidebar boldly proclaims that there is no official Filthy Frank merch store. Now, taken at face value, this statement appears to be correct. As mentioned earlier, there were 3 different Filthy Frank merch stores, but visiting any of these 3 URLs no longer works. However, this isn't really the full story. While investigating this topic, I discovered that one of the original merch store websites not only still exists, but it's still possible to order merch from it to this very day. Come with me as we dive down the strange rabbit hole of the Filthy Frank merch stores. The first Filthy Frank merch drop to ever occur happened in November 2012. On the Filthy Frank Facebook page, Joji would share a video, which, to my knowledge, was never uploaded to the YouTube channel. This video launched a contest asking people to design 2 t-shirts, where the winners would receive a free t-shirt once he began selling them. A month later, Joji would make a post saying, "Those t-shirts you guys were asking for are finally coming out within the next week. We're only dropping 300 t-shirts as a test run first, then we'll restock. Whoever orders from the first 300 will get a special note from me in the order." 2 t-shirts, presumably using the designs that won the contest, had been offered for sale. Now, these shirts did release on the very first merch website, a site called filthyfrankapparel.com. Additionally, Joji did include notes with at least some of them. The most famous of these notes was posted on Reddit by the user Zelda Monica, who was apparently the very first person to ever order a Filthy Frank shirt, a fact that Joji acknowledged in the included note. After this first test run, Joji would continue selling shirts throughout 2013. However, by 2014, all shirts were listed as sold out, and filthyfrankapparel.com would go down entirely in 2015, and remains this way to this day. However, this website didn't go down because there was no more Filthy Frank merch. Rather, Joji had simply launched another merch store. This occurred in April 2014. Joji would begin sharing links to filthyfrank.spreadshirt.com. Spreadshirt is a print-to-order website, meaning the merch was only made once it had been ordered. Joji had evidently had issues producing the shirt sold on his first website, so this was probably a more attractive option for him. The website would initially launch with only the 2 designs from the first website, but with these designs also available on other accessories such as iPhone cases. However, over the next few months, and then years, more and more designs would be added to the Spreadshirt site. This website would continue to be the main Filthy Frank merch site all the way up until September of 2016. On the 10th of September 2016, on a post on the Filthy Frank Facebook page, Joji would launch the 3rd and final merch store, filthytokyo.com. In the Filthy Frank video, Filthy Frank vs Chin Chin, uploaded on November 27th, 2016, Joji would not only link to the site, but promote it at the end of the video. Future videos would now link to this site instead of the Spreadshirt site. Now, why Joji decided to launch a new website is not entirely clear. Firstly, for the whole life of filthytokyo.com, the Spreadshirt site was never shut down. It was still up and running, which meant that Joji effectively had 2 merch stores running in parallel. In fact, on the second last Filthy Frank video ever uploaded, Asian Pizza, Joji seems to have accidentally linked the Spreadshirt site instead of Filthy Tokyo. Secondly, the merch sold on filthytokyo.com was still being produced by Spreadshirt. We know this because the tags of certain pieces of merch that were only ever offered for sale on filthytokyo.com say that they were produced at Spreadshirt. My guess is that Joji just wanted his own website rather than a Spreadshirt storefront, but that's just pure speculation on my part. Now, as mentioned in the introduction to this video, Joji retired the Filthy Frank character in 2017. However, he did not immediately shut down either of the active merch stores. Both the Spreadshirt site and filthytokyo.com remained up and running unchanged for at least half a year. In February of 2018, fans would notice that the Filthy Tokyo site was modified so that only a single merch item, the I Want to Die shirt, remained for sale. By May of 2018, the site was displaying a Shopify Shop Unavailable error, and the website would go down entirely later that year, and remain so to this day. I've even checked the underlying Shopify store, filthytokyo.myshopify.com, and confirmed it's definitely still down. So let's summarize everything we've covered so far. Joji had launched 3 websites to sell Filthy Frank merchandise. The first website went offline in 2015, and the third website went offline in 2018. But what about the second website, the Spreadshirt site? Joji never shut it down after launching filthytokyo.com, but did he ever shut it down after then? If you visit filthyfrank.spreadshirt.com today, the website will appear to be down. However, playing around with this link in the Internet Archive reveals something interesting. In March of 2016, visiting this site would actually redirect the user to shop.spreadshirt.com/filthyfrank. Evidently, Spreadshirt had changed their URL format. Now, Joji would continue to use the old link, filthyfrank.spreadshirt.com, in all his videos, which was fine since it redirected to this new URL anyway. In fact, the Spreadshirt site would actually remain this way all the way up until late 2021. At this point, the URL would change again, this time to filthyfrank.myspreadshop.com. When this URL changed, the second version of the URL, shop.spreadshirt.com/filthyfrank, changed to redirect to this third URL. But most importantly, the first URL stopped redirecting entirely, instead returning a 404 page. This would have led many to believe that the merch store had shut down, as clicking the merch link in any Filthy Frank video, which all use the first URL, would return the 404. I speculate that this is what caused the moderators of r/filthyfrank to put the notice in the sidebar. So, with everything we know now, an obvious question remains. Does this merch store remain online today? And the answer, as you may have guessed by now, is yes. It can no longer be accessed by the URL linked in all of the Filthy Frank videos, but both the second and third URLs I talked about earlier still work perfectly fine. So, let's take a look around the Filthy Frank merch store, untouched for over 6 years. The first thing to note about the site, if we compare it to the archives of the store from back in 2017, is that the designs offered for sale appear to be exactly the same. I couldn't find a single design listed for sale back in 2017 that wasn't still offered today. However, due to some errors on the site, there are some caveats to that, which I'll explain shortly. Unfortunately, as the site has not been maintained for over 6 years, there are 2 major issues with the store. Firstly, at some point in the migration process across the 3 different URLs, the names of each piece of merch changed from the name Joji gave them to the name of the design image file Joji would have originally uploaded. This is, arguably, actually a minor data leak. For example, the Who Am I shirt is now called Mirror V3 Flattened. The most interesting is the Bolse shirt, which now has a random string of numbers, followed by JPEG. This name format is commonly found when saving pictures from Facebook. This suggests that Joji probably downloaded this image from a Facebook page. The second major issue with the store is that it has not handled the migration of the phone case merch very well over the years. The website originally offered certain designs for sale as phone cases. However, for whatever reason, the website no longer offers any phone cases for sale, and furthermore, all designs that were originally meant for phone cases can now only be purchased on random pieces of clothing that they were obviously never intended for. This means that there are actually new pieces of merch that aren't really meant to exist. For example, there's now a shirt that features this iPhone 5 design on it. And, perhaps rather disturbingly, these designs are also available for purchase on baby bodysuits, leading to some extremely questionable merch such as this. To quote Filthy Frank, if someone actually buys one of these for their child,
"I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop!"
Anyway, after looking around the store for a while, an obvious thought crossed my mind. Why don't I actually buy something? So, I did just that. I picked what I thought was the most iconic design, the pink eye drawing that had been used since the very first Filthy Frank shirts, added it to my cart, and placed my order. And I waited, and waited, and waited. And then, this showed up at my door. Now, admittedly, I didn't really have any doubt that the item would arrive. Just because Joji didn't maintain the store anymore didn't really make any difference. Spreadshirt were the ones who made and shipped the shirts, and I had no doubt that they would gladly take my money and ship whatever I had ordered off their website. But regardless, the shirt looked exactly like what I had ordered. I must admit, I haven't studied older pieces of merch to confirm that they're exactly identical, but for all intents and purposes, this is original, official, Filthy Frank merch. Now, if you're interested in purchasing some for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description, with two caveats. 1. As mentioned, this merch may not be exactly identical to the merch from 6 years ago. And 2, I have absolutely no idea if Joji receives any profits from these sales. I would assume he still does, as to this day, he pays a company to manage the Filthy Frank channel, but that's again just speculation on my part. Now, before I end this video, there's two things I'd like to address. The first is the Francis of the Filth book, which, so far, I have neglected to mention. This book, arguably the most iconic piece of Filthy Frank merch, was released at the same time as Filthy Frank's final video. It was not sold on any of the aforementioned merch stores, but rather was sold directly on Amazon. To this day, you can still buy the book off Amazon. It is not out of print. Now, unfortunately, I often see people selling the books on eBay as if they're somehow rare. They are absolutely not, and you do not need to buy a second-hand copy from one of these sellers. Much like Spreadshirt, self-published books on Amazon are made to print. There's no such thing as an original run of these books. The only difference in the books actually depends on where you ordered it. You can see my copy was printed in Australia because I ordered it from Amazon Australia, and it was likely printed at the Amazon Australia Book Press in Sydney. So, if you want a copy of the book, please order a nice fresh one off Amazon rather than someone's old one from eBay. The second thing I wanted to address is the state of Joji's current merch. This is kind of outside the scope of this video, but for the sake of completeness, and because it's a little confusing, I'll give you a brief overview. Joji currently has 3 merch stores. No, seriously, what is actually up with this guy and having so many merch stores? Anyway, the first is shop.jojimusic.com, where he sells merch related to his current album and tours. Then there's jojistore.com, also called the Joji Archive Store, where he sells merch related to his previous albums and tours. And finally, there's Plum Corp, which sells shirts related to the Plum Corp YouTube channel, which Joji presumably owns since he holds the trademark for it, and also sells whatever the heck this is. Unfortunately, there's too much to unpack here with Plum Corp, so you'll just have to wait for the video I plan to make about it. Anyway, that's the state of Joji's 3 active merch stores, or I guess 4 if you include the Filthy Frank merch store we just discovered. Anyway, I think that's all there is to say about the history of Filthy Frank merch stores. I hope you found this video interesting. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate your subscription, which directly helps me make more videos like this. You're also more than welcome to drop by my Discord server and say hello. And if you'd like to support this channel financially, please consider becoming a member where you'll get access to perks such as early access to videos. Anyway, this has been NB Darkman. Thank you so much for watching.